Now, there were some very quick assumptions that have been made probably all throughout history about what this must be, and it must be demonic possession, spiritual oppression, things like that. And there have been quite a few believers throughout time. Martin Luther had wondered if it was something demonic, and certainly St. Ignatius of Loyola linked it with spiritual demonic oppression. But there also have been many, many believers that haven't just jumped to a definitive conclusion with that. One of my favorite passages in Scripture where Jesus handles that sort of topic, John chapter 9. There was a blind man who was born blind from birth. And the disciples were quick to make their presuppositions known. They asked Jesus, who was it that sinned? Was it this man or his parents that he was born blind? And Jesus said, neither. It was so that the glory of God might be manifest. And I think that that's really beautiful. Jesus had the opportunity to preach a sermon on sin, but he didn't at that moment, which is very interesting. Why didn't he? Wouldn't it have been a more gospel-oriented sermon if Jesus is like, well, yes, actually, everybody's a sinner and you're going to need me if you need to be saved. You need me to be saved. No, like Jesus actually emphasized that there was a bigger purpose in that suffering and didn't offer a lot of the whys that we may sometimes crave, like Job was asking a lot of why questions, and we oftentimes don't get, at least yet, the why of those things, other than God has a bigger plan. God is doing bigger stuff. So John chapter 9, Jesus corrected the disciples, and seemingly gently, that they were mistaken. They were confused. It was for God's glory. Now, also very interesting about that passage is that the description of the healing of the blind man has his faith being talked about after he was healed. So maybe he placed faith before Jesus healed him, but the text talks about it after he was healed, exclaiming the faith that he had in Jesus. I find that really fascinating, as a lot of healings, the faith was proclaimed first before Jesus healed. Whether or not in the chronology of that it was before or after, I think it's important to dig in to the fact that in scriptures, God has good gifts for, yes, those who follow, but also there are gracious gifts that God gives even before and even when people don't follow. So back to the assumptions piece. A lot of people, myself included, can jump to wild assumptions about what it is. It has to be demonic. It has to be spiritual. Or in our secular world, we're going to hear the other side of it, that, oh, those clowns in the Christian realm, or religious people, they're saying everything's demonic. And I've heard that. I've been taught that at some of the trainings that I've gone to. But then when we look in the history of these things and we look at the people who are spending time with people who suffer, we have a bigger picture. People that sometimes did jump to assumptions. I'm guilty of that as well, even at this stage. But also people who are willing to sit, to be with people, to get a fuller picture, to appreciate that we are body, mind, and spirit. And God asks us to love the Lord, our God, with our whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. And if that's the case, we can't rush to conclusions about what these things must be or aren't. And so is it sin with OCD? Well, maybe broadly, just like knee pain is a result of sin, or broadly like cancer is a result of sin. But is it specifically because of sin? So far as I understand it, that I don't think it is any more than any other person may struggle with. So with the history of these things, I want you to know that not only are you not alone today, but you've not been alone for a long time. There are people who have been standing in the gap in that community to walk, to identify, to find solutions. And that is quite incredible.